Hello everyone, welcome to Eye on Africa. Here are your headlines on this Friday. Candidates in Algeria's presidential election take to the stage for the only televised debate ahead of the vote, as hundreds of thousands of people take to the streets demanding the election be cancelled. At least 3 people are feared dead in Nairobi after a residential building collapsed. Several people are still believed to be buried under the rubble. And the Fulani people are one of the last nomadic groups on the planet and have been herding cattle across Western Africa for centuries. But today, conflict, religious extremism, and climate change are all threatening their way of life. First of the 5 candidates in Algeria's presidential election next week all took part tonight in the only televised debate ahead of the poll. The candidates, who are all heavily associated with former President Abdelaziz Bouteflika's regime, discussed issues like the economy, Algerian society, and individual freedoms. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of Algerians took to the streets on Friday in one of the biggest protests in the country in recent months. It's the last Friday before next week's presidential election. Protesters want that vote scrapped. Mo Julien has the story.
There haven't been this many people on Algiers streets since the early days of the protest movement. Tens of thousands gathered after the Friday prayer to tell those in power that they don't trust them to organize the December 12th presidential poll.
We are here to say no to elections, no to this government who is putting our children in jail. We want the rule of law, a free country that respects individual freedom. We are fed up with injustice and dictatorship.
After succeeding in pushing former leader Abdelaziz Bouteflika out of office in April, protesters say there needs to be more change and ask that the vote be put off until more top officials step aside.
We will go out every day, and there will be no vote with the gangs. Never a vote with the gangs.
Many Algerians believe a vote with 5 candidates who are either former ministers or former supporters of Bouteflika can't possibly be fair. Earlier this week, the country's interior minister called people opposed to the election traitors, mercenaries and homosexuals, while the army chief called for a massive turnout in the poll, accusing detractors of plotting against the fatherland.
The governor of Nairobi has been arrested after Kenya's chief prosecutor ordered his detention for alleged economic crimes. Mike Sonko and other county officials are accused of having benefited from irregular procurement and payments of $3.5 million. Nordin Haji, the public prosecutor, said he had enough evidence to prosecute the men for money laundering and other economic crimes. Sonko has previously spent time in jail for failing to respect court dates. He has also had to deny multiple allegations of illegal activities, including drug trafficking. 3 people died Friday when a residential building collapsed in the Kenyan capital of Nairobi. Several more are believed to be buried under the rubble. The Kenyan Red Cross said 11 survivors had been recovered from the flattened block. Jean-Emile Jamin has the story.
A devastating collapse. This 6-story residential building in eastern Nairobi reduced to rubble on Friday. Scores of people clustered around, held back by a cordon, waiting to find news of their family and friends as police and a mechanical digger worked through the wreckage.
When we got here, we found the house had already collapsed. We immediately started the rescue, and so far we have rescued 10 people alive. But my colleagues from the other side found 2 women who were unfortunately dead.
Building collapses are common in Nairobi, where housing is in high demand and unscrupulous developers often bypass regulations. After scores of people were killed in collapses across 2015 and 16, President Uhuru Kenyatta ordered an audit of all the country's buildings to see if they were up to code. The National Construction Authority finding that up to 58% were unfit for habitation. The reasons behind this morning's destruction are still unknown, with residents angry at a lack of accountable building management.
Even the caretaker, we have not seen the caretaker. Chief was here, he was interviewing people, how many people were here. I think it's now the government to take initiative. The government to take the initiative so that we could be having record in every house, how many people are staying there, and it should be done by our chief and our police.
Kenyan authorities confirmed several deaths by late afternoon. It was not immediately clear how many people were inside the building at the time of the collapse.
A spokeswoman for Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed says he will not be attending any events where he could be asked questions publicly during his Nobel Prize acceptance trip next week. This is due to limited time because of pressing domestic issues. She also mentions Abiy Ahmed's, quote, humble disposition. The leader was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize earlier this year but has given no interview since. The acceptance trip is usually an opportunity for the winner to speak to the international press, and the Nobel Institute has called his decision, quote, highly problematic. A Nigerian journalist has been rearrested one day after his bail was upheld by a high court. Pictures show Omoyele Sowore being dragged from an Abuja courtroom where he had been summoned for a hearing. The former presidential candidate and founder of a news website was first detained in August when he called for revolution. On Thursday, a court had ordered that he be released by Nigeria's Department for State Security. Sowore's lawyer says he will do everything he can to free his client. Take a listen.
What is happening now will not go away unchallenged. We either run this country on the platform of the rule of law, or we resort to gangsterism, which is what is going on. Exactly. But we're not going to allow it, because we fought against military dictators, including General Muhammadu Buhari, and defeated all of them. Yes. All.
Finally, they are one of the last great nomadic peoples of the planet. The Fulani are a community of some 35 million people scattered across 15 countries in Western Africa. They migrate with their cattle, often following the swing of the seasons. But because of conflict, religious extremism, and climate change, their age-old way of life is under threat.
After travelling hundreds of kilometres through the bush, this herd can finally take a sip of water. It has taken them weeks to get here. Having spent the dry season in Nigeria, Ibrahim and his family left in July to travel to the wet grasslands of Niger.
During the dry season, we always have a water problem. It rained earlier this year, so the ponds and watering holes were full, but the drought came back. The watering holes dried up, and we had to fall back on this well to give water to the animals.
Ibrahim and his clan are Fulani Wadabi. The Wadabi are famous for travelling extremely long distances with their herds. But their ancestral way of life is threatened by the successive droughts that have hit the Sahel. Rawada is the leader of this clan. In just 10 years, he has lost half of his cows. He doubts his children will be able to live off the livestock for much longer.
I don't think we can carry on breeding anymore. With climate change, things are becoming more complicated for us, not to mention what will happen for the generations to come.
Every year in Niger, an equivalent of over 110,000 football fields of grassland disappear because of desertification and soil erosion. Despite mounting difficulties, a number of Fulani herders refuse to abandon their livestock. Local radio station Marhaba is supporting those continuing with their annual migration. They broadcast daily bulletins with information about the safety of the various trails, weather forecasts, and the availability of pasture land.
This information is extremely useful to us. It orients us during our journey towards free pasture land and where water is available. The radio helps us avoid certain obstacles.
At the end of the rainy season, once the animals have eaten their fill, the Wadabi Fulani celebrate Garawal, the salt cure. At nightfall, they dance to seduce their wives. A final celebration before they head back out to face new challenges. Soon, the grass will disappear and the ponds will dry up. This time, they will have to walk further in search of new pastures.
That is going to do it for this edition of Eye on Africa. Thank you for watching. Live from Paris continues with Nadia Masi after this short break. Stay tuned.
Je regarde France 24 parce qu'en tant qu'étudiante en sciences politiques, ça me permet de rester à jour sur les informations dans le monde, sur les conflits, les débats politiques, tout ça.
الاختلاف بين فرنسا 24 والقنوات التانية في المحتوى المتنوع وفي التوجه الأقرب للحيادية.
I like their coverage, especially with the news and the politics. But also I like the cultural aspect because that, me as a Kenyan, I get to learn a lot about Francophone, Africa, Francophone in general, whether it's in Europe or here, just from France 24.
France 24 m'aide à voir une perspective plus complète du monde et à comprendre différentes langues et différentes cultures.
France 24, with you everywhere, all the time. Liberté, égalité, actualité.
Versailles, the Louvre, Mont Saint-Michel are well-known stars of French heritage. But French genius and France harbours many other hidden treasures. The arts, gastronomy, architecture, as well as nature's wonders. Come along with France 24, discover France's living heritage. From young apprentices to accomplished craftsmen and farmers, to Michelin star sporting chefs, meet these people whose passion for their professions preserve and drive French heritage.
You are here on France 24 and France24.com.